My name is Chris Kosizi Strawn. In 2017, I took my first trip to the Congo with my nonprofit Kicking It for a Cause. It opened my eyes to the people and cultures of Africa, and I fell in love. Bridging my love of sports, I'm now on a mission to show the world what makes African athletes so unique. Join me on my journey around the world as I sit down with your favorite Africans in sports. On this episode of Africans in Sports, we take you to Houston, Texas to sit down with the first ever African summer and winter Olympian, Seun Adigun, and hear how she went from running in the streets of Chicago to slaying down tracks at the Olympics. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Africans in Sports. I'm your host, Chris Kosizi Strawn, and today we have the pleasure of being in Houston, Texas with the first African athlete to perform in the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics, Seun Adigun.
Yeah, good job. You did my name. I'm so excited.
I'm hyped too.
My name.
Listen,
that was amazing.
Listen.
Yes.
I got this. This ain't my first rodeo now.
Let me tell you how that just look. We can set it up. Come on, Chris. Let's do this.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you for
I'm
having me.
African names always have a really deep meaning.
Yes, indeed.
Can you give me your full name and tell me exactly what it means?
Yes, so Mariam is actually my first name, which many people don't know, but that is my first name. And Mariam is, this is Mary, Marie, it's Arabic, it's a Muslim name.
Wow.
So my family is Muslim, so I go by Mariam first, which is on my birth certificate, but my family decided to call me by my Yoruba name. So my first middle name is Oluwaseun.
Whoa.
Which, exactly, it's a lot of letters, a little bit of a mouthful. So my nickname for that is Seun, which is what everybody calls me, Seun. Yeah, so Oluwaseun means like thank you, God. You know, Oluwa is God, like our God, and Oseun, like thank you. And then Abike, you know, it's a Oriki name that I got from my grandmother. It was my grandmother's name. And to take care, it's like being basically kind of like born into care or taken care of, like it's a strong name because it's a name that came from my grandmother, who I just so happened to look exactly like her.
What?
Mariam came from my other grandmother too, but wow. And I would happen to take her athleticism.
Okay.
Don't tell my mom and dad though. We're gonna give it to my grandma.
Shout out to grandma. Word.
Yeah. Then I've got Wurala, which is the equivalent of like precious. You can just say that's precious. We'll just stop there on that one. And then Adigun is my last name. Yeah.
Wow. So you were meant to be special from birth.
We thank God. We just thank God.
So everyone's from Nigeria, but you're from the Chicago.
I am.
Take me back to the Chi. Tell me about growing up in Chicago.
Oh, yeah. I was born in Chicago. I was born in a city. When I was about 5 or 6, moved to the north side of Chicago, area called Evanston. And so I spent most of my life in Evanston. And then like a year and a half before I graduated high school, my parents decided to move us all the way to the south suburbs. So I ended up transferring to another high school all the way in the south suburbs. In Flossmoor, and then I ended up coming to Houston after high school, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, so you guys still keep the Nigerian roots going, like you guys are a typical Nigerian family, stick to it, and you keep it in your life still to this day, right?
It's safe to say typical first generation, right? Like born and raised here, me and my siblings, but like we are Nigerian and just African to the core. Like everything we knew and understood growing up was all Nigerian, but once you leave and step outside those doors, then you're in America, you're living in American culture, you are understanding or being understood as a black man or a black woman. Right. But when you walk inside the door, you are an African child. Yeah, it was an interesting complex to have growing up.
I want to take it to sports.
Yes.
Can you bring me back to your first sports memory?
I was about, 9 years old, maybe 10. And me and my mom, we were running late to the race. It was the first time I'd ever run track. I just was fat. I used to just like beat boys in the streets. I was like, okay, cool, I can do this track thing, whatever. I was supposed to run the 100 and the 200, but I got there so late. We had to drive like 3 hours to get to it. Got there so late, we missed the races.
Oh, man.
And so the coaches were like, well, you didn't drove all the way out here. We're going to try and get you in something. So they put me in the 400. And I mean, I didn't know any better. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And my mom was like, oh, okay, cool. She gonna run around, okay. So they didn't quite tell me exactly how to do this. Mind you, I'm born asthmatic. And I was just like, okay. So they said, okay, yeah, just run to here. And then I think they told me, like, slow down when you get here. And no, they just said pick up pace when you get, I don't know. They didn't tell me enough that obviously that I can remember right now. I took off and ran like a crazy lady. And I was smoking them, woo, woo, woo. Everybody was excited, whoa, who's that in lane? Whatever I was in, just going. And then all of a sudden I came to 200. I was still okay, but I was like, whoo, you know, it's getting kind of real. 220, 250, 300. Everybody was passing me, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I was just like, I was having an asthma attack. And by the time I got to the line, I was like, and fell out on the line.
What?
And my mom was like, oh my God, hey, my job. She was so dramatic. She said, oh my God. She ran out. I was crying. I was like, I'm never doing this again. I did not run track again until I was 16 or something like that. Basketball is my favorite sport.
Like hey, you
get it, you know it.
Wait. So you hoop?
I'm a hooper. Yes.
What? Roll the tape back. Before Seun took on a life of running track, she was using her natural athleticism on the court to smoke the competition. She played power forward, leading the way with her breakaway speed and her hops with the 38-inch vertical.
But nobody's recruiting a 5'5" for their center.
Yeah,
period.
True.
Like, nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
And then because I transferred high schools in the middle of my junior year, you know, that's a huge recruiting year. So I didn't get any looks from D1. So I was like, man, maybe I gotta do this track thing. That's how I ended up in track.
A lot of times when I sit down with my African friends, they say that their parents aren't really about sports like that, but it sounds like you had a really good support system for your sporting events.
The thing about them was, as long as our grades were right, you could do what you want to do.
Right.
If you keep them grades right, and I was a bookworm. I was hard-headed, but I was a bookworm.
Yeah.
And so I was able to keep my grades right to keep my ability to play in sports. And then my mom would be at every basketball game, every flag football tournament. We outside, she freezing, she'd be that mom. Yeah, my dad would show up whenever he can because he was always working, you know, just making sure to provide for the family. As my mom was as well, but she was just like the more super hands-on. And so my dad, they'll drive downstate for the state track meet and they'll be down there.
Wow. What made you want to do track from the beginning though? How did that start at 8 years old?
I didn't want to do track, I ain't gonna lie to you. I was just fast. So everybody was like, no, you know, they were just trying to convince my mom, like, you know, just let her run. And she was like, okay, you know, cool. And I was like, cool, I can do it. You know, like I was beating people in the street. You know, you just take your shoes off and throw your head back and race the boys in the street. And I was beating them and they were like, you should run track. I was like, okay, cool, after basketball practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you're amazing in it.
Can you imagine?
You don't even want to do it.
I didn't want to do it. And then, but you know, I'm a competitor.
Right.
I'm a competitor. So
don't matter what it is.
Man.
I'm trying to win.
Listen,
Yep.
you get it.
Yeah,
So I got out there and got real competitive. And then I ended up picking up the one event. I was like, well, I'm cool if I could jump over hurdles. Like, that's cool. I can explore my adventurous side. So I was happy with that. I was like, cool. So I started taking track a little bit more seriously my junior year. And then by senior year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and teach myself how to hurdle. I had great coaches that were there, but they were new to the type of talent that I had, and they didn't really understand how to teach me how to hurdle. But I came from a state championship team in track, so I had already some of those tools. And then I decided to just lock in during that off season. And next thing you know, I'm cracking times and you know, so I didn't even get recruited to college because I didn't really play. I didn't run. I didn't really run until my senior, so I was a late bloomer. So by the time I was ready to get recruited, all my times from junior year were like not good enough to get recruited at a school like University of Houston's track and field program. So I ended up my senior year, at the end of it, I already knew I wanted to come to Houston. I had the academics to basically go anywhere I really wanted to. So I already applied, I got into school. I knew this was the program I wanted to be in. I understood the culture. I got here. And then they were like, oh, maybe we can offer her some money, because I ended up running fast by the end of my senior. They were like,
You already know where this is headed. After high school, Seun attended the University of Houston, basically walking onto the team after a stellar senior season. While at U of H, she excelled at the 60 and 100-meter hurdles. In 2009, she set a U of H record in the 60-meter with a time of 8.9, which put her in the top 5 in the NCAA and top 15 in the whole world. She was later named the Conference USA Female Track Athlete of the Year. But it wasn't all high. From what I understand, you had a heart problem.
I did.
What's that first day like when you get that news?
So I actually had the heart issue as a youngster. It's like 12. At 12, 11 years old. That's when I first got diagnosed with a heart condition, but it wasn't very well understood at the time. I think they had understood it kind of as like, you know, a type of tachycardia, where it's an accelerated heart rate, where they needed to go in and kind of burn out some of the extra tissues that were in there. But at that time, it had just gone from open heart surgery to a catheter surgery, where they just stick basically little catheters through the vessels until they find the area, and then they zip them out. So I had it, that was pediatric, that was when I was a kid. And then every year after that, the condition started to resurface itself a little bit more and a little bit more. So by my sophomore year, they found me a really amazing cardiologist who was able to identify what was actually going on with my heart. And so by the end of sophomore year, it's like, okay, I'm almost done with the season. So he wanted me to get through the season, and then we would reconnect once the season was over, and then we'd talk about the options. But unfortunately, he was killed in a tragic plane crash. Yeah, so it's like, before he could tell me what he knew, and before I could learn all these years going up, trying to figure it out, this man is tragically killed. Now I'm back to square one, or zero, you know, with this whole heart condition. I had to start that all over again until I got to my junior year. After my junior NCAA championship debut as a hurdler, I made the hurdles, but I had an episode on the track.
What?
Which is where my heart rate goes into like beats of 250 beats a minute. It's just like, whoa, like it's just going. And I'm sitting there, and this was like the first time where that happened while I was running. I was like, usually I don't get like, cause it'll have an arrhythmia, which is like a irregular heart rate. It'll just like it'll skip, like almost like, and I could feel it. It'll just skip a beat, and then once it does that enough, it's almost like it'll skip that, and then it starts misfiring, and it'll just go. And it's because like the atrium and the ventricles, the atrium sits on the top, they don't talk to each other right, because the beat is skipping, so they'll just go into fibrillations. So I was on the track, and I was like, and mind you, I was the type of person where, because I knew I had a heart condition, I wouldn't touch my knees, or like, you know, when people get tired, I never, and it wasn't even for anybody else, it was for myself. It was like, I didn't want to mentally feel defeated by anything that could fatigue me, because I was afraid to die. Like, I was afraid, like, if I lay out like everybody else and close my eyes, I might not wake up. So I would just walk and walk. And I might be walking like a snail, but I would just keep walking until I feel better. And then, you know, once I recover from whatever, it's a workout or a race, I would be fine. But that day, after the NCAA meet, I was looking just like this. I stopped after the race, and I was like, whew. I'm like, dang, that was kind of weird. You know, in my head, I'm like, hey, I usually don't feel my heart like while I'm running. And so I stood there for a little while. And the lady came to me after, you know, you got to clear the race off. It's a NCAA meet race, so you're like really strict. And I was like, yeah. She's like, you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm good. And then I walk over to the side. Then I found myself touch the ground. And I was like, maybe I'm not okay. I was like, so I sat there like this. I just sat there for a little while with this like weird smirk on my face. And the lady looked at me, and she was like, and I told her, I was like, can you come in for a second? And she was like, yeah. I was like, you see those paramedics over there? You think you can tell them to come over here?
Like, just like that.
That lady looks at me like, I was like, yeah. She was like, okay. I was like, thanks. Just tell them to come over here. because I didn't want to, I just wanted to continue to be myself. The paramedics came there, and all of a sudden they're strapping me up to EKG. Well, I explained to them what was going on with my heart. They strapped me up to a EKG, and they're just watching my heart rate, and they're like, we're going to have to put you on a stretcher and cart you off. And I was like, oh, no, I can walk. And they're like, no, we're going to, because you don't want to play with the heart.
Right.
Man, I was so embarrassed. They were stretching me off.
Oh, man.
On the ride.
Yeah.
It was like that for like 45 minutes. And they were trying to restart my heart after a while, because they're like, you can't sustain these beats for this long. Or they were afraid I would like flatline or something. So they were like, yeah, we're gonna have to restart your heart. I was like, no, we're not. We're just gonna wait until it does it by itself, because it does it by itself all the time. It just stops.
Yeah, you know your body.
Right. I was like, no, we're not. You're not about to kill me. That's not gonna happen. We're not doing that. So they ended up letting it roll out. But the good thing was we had all this data now of what was going on, what the heart was actually doing. And so when I got with a new cardiologist, they were able to do the surgery my senior year, again, the second time.
After successful surgery, Seun started hitting record times, leading her coaches to offering her a coaching job and a full ride to U of H graduate school. Her life consisted of school, coaching, and training for the 2012 Summer Olympics in London, England.
That was an accumulation of my entire life of hurdles in life. And like I was telling you, day in and day out, waking up, feeling like I got beat up, going back, doing it all over again, having this heart surgery, having that heart surgery, going here, doing that, not being recruited. You know, it was a accumulation of all of these things that were riled up into one race. I knew that coming out of college, I could have competed for the U.S. But because I think I was like number 6 in the U.S. and I had the number 1 time and number 2. I had the number 1 and number 2 time in NCAA because one was win legal and one was win illegal. So I was in a good space coming out, but I knew that I wanted to compete for Nigeria because I wanted to bring back something to the land that created the parents that I love, the land that created the culture that I represent, the land that I give tribute to regularly, yet I have not done anything for this country. So if there's something I'm gonna contribute and I've been able to get the benefit of having my life back health-wise, I'm gonna pour that into bringing up the value of Nigeria athletically.
And she didn't stop there. After hanging up the spikes following the 2012 Olympics, and focusing solely on her education, a voice was going in the back of her head saying, "You're not done yet." She learned about bobsledding, and after 6 weeks of training, she tried out for the U.S. team and made it. She competed for the U.S. in the World Cup, but she wanted to stay true to her promise to Nigeria and the continent of Africa. So she co-founded the Bobsled and Skeleton Federation of Nigeria and captained the historic Nigerian women's bobsled team, making her the first summer and winter Olympian for the continent of Africa.
What? And I think it's starting to become more and more surreal because, to be honest, I probably didn't come down off that adrenaline high from the Olympics until the end of last year. Like, there was just so much going on, and I had to be in such a locked-in autopilot mode in order to make things happen that I didn't realize my reality had been settled in that before it was settled into the real world. So it took me a minute to get out of that reality, and then I finally realized, like, yo, this is important. This is huge. Like, this is 30 years later and people still talk about Cool Runnings, the Jamaican bobsled team who did this in '88. People still singing their praises 30 years later. We are still living in this moment, so we don't understand what's happening. But the reality of it is it's 2018 and the first ever for an entire continent in a sport was created by a woman.
It's crazy.
And it's like, not just any woman, but a black woman, and so I don't think people really understand what's happening, but that's so powerful for every single young girl, black or white, young boy, black or white, out there. Like, yeah, it's 2019, and at this time you would think everything would have been created by now, but no, there isn't. Like, everybody still has a very, very relevant spot in this planet to create their lane and create what is supposed to be meant for them to do.
So if we fast forward to 2018, the world takes notice, and you're the woman Sportsman of the Year.
That's crazy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
How does that feel?
It feels amazing. And you know, I mean, obviously I didn't do it by myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I enlisted in some people, a team, an amazing team of people, many of whom I still work with, or I'm still close to. My teammates who believed in the dream and what was happening, and
mm-hmm.
you know, and they were selfless enough to be able to understand the impact of what was happening and stick through to what was to be done. It's a lot when you're talking about trying to do something for an entire country and you're one person. You can't do it. You need some help. So I'm really grateful for the fact that the world jumped on board, because when I launched that GoFundMe, that's how it went viral. Because I launched it as my gift to Nigeria, Nigeria's gift to Africa. And I asked people to join the journey. People trusted, even if they were just excited about it and gave however $5 and but people really trusted and believed in my ability to help lead this team, not only start a federation, learn how to drive, then qualify, and then compete at the games in a little over a year. You know, like, that's huge, and that took the world, and that's why I think the world was so excited about it, because people got a chance all over the world to have a little piece of it, a little part of it. People all over the world can say, I donated to the first ever bobsled team to come out of the continent of Africa.
Wow. If you can give a young Nigerian girl advice right now, what would you tell her?
Stay true to who you are. You do not have to put yourself in a box. You can be every single thing that you are, and you can be proud, you can be beautiful, you can be amazing at all of it. Don't let anyone hold you back, you know, because no doesn't mean it's a red light. Sometimes it's just a yield. Sometimes it's just a detour. Sometimes it just means you can't go that way, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it at all. And so, yeah, just to believe in themselves. I always like to breathe life into people and remind them of their beauty, remind them of their royalty, remind them they're a king, they're a young queen, they are these people, not because I'm saying it, but because those are the attributes in which they naturally possess, and they just can live in that skin.
I want to go to the mountaintops and tell the whole world about you. Hopefully everybody watches this. Listen, this has been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
I was coming into it expecting so much, and I got so much more out of it. So I definitely want to thank you, and once again tell you how amazing you are.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
That.
This is Africans in Sports. I'm Chris. That's Seun. We out of here. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Africans in Sports. Don't forget to check out our other videos. And like and subscribe, because we're hitting you with all of the dope interviews with your favorite African athletes right here on Africans in Sports.